Breaking news from Washington that 100 Republican House members have sent a letter to President Obama asking him not to nominate Ambassador Susan Rice, she's our UN ambassador, to replace Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Writing in part, quote, Ambassador Rice is widely viewed as having either willfully or incompetently misled the American public about the Benghazi matter. We believe that making her the face of U.S. foreign policy in your second term would greatly undermine your desire to improve U.S. relations with the world and continue to build trust with the American people. This comes 2 days after a dozen Democratic House members came out to show their support for Ms. Rice. Take a listen.
To batter this woman because they don't feel that they have had the ability to batter President Obama is something that we, the women, we are not going to stand by and watch.
We will not allow a brilliant public servant's record to be mugged to cut off her consideration to become Secretary of State.
Here now is the woman you saw moments ago, Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's a delegate to the U.S. Congress representing Washington, D.C. She was at that news conference. Ms. Norton, thank you so much for being here. So your thoughts, because you didn't really touch on the race or the gender issue, but the other women who were there said this is clear sexism and racism. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I certainly don't. I don't call out sexism or racism unless I have some evidence. I can see why some would believe that. I gave the opening statement, then had to go back to a hearing, so I never even heard the rest, but please do not ascribe those views to me. I think that she's being singled out coming out of the presidential campaign. One of our committees, Oversight and Government Reform, in the middle of the presidential campaign and a recess, had a hearing, and she became the focus of that hearing. And I think that came out of sheer partisanship. When you say 100 House members have sent a letter, well, they don't have anything to do with who's going to be nominated to be Secretary of State. You know, when I get 50 members of the Senate, I might be concerned.
Yeah, you get confirmed in the Senate. But that's an important point. I want to clear that up. So you then disagree, because we had Congresswoman after Congresswoman come out on Friday and say this is racism and it's sexism, and you are saying on the record you disagree with that contention.
I am. You have to understand, I'm a former chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, so I don't take racism and sexism by implication. I have to see some evidence of it, and the evidence is that they're focusing in on the messenger. They know that the administration was evaluating this information as it came in. They have her with the information she had at the time. I quoted at the press conference the Office of the National Intelligence Director evaluating what she said. And he said that that was the information we had at the time. That was the information we gave to the administration. And that's the information she gave.
I mean, there's a defense
public.
and a discussion to be had on the substance back and forth, and both parties have been having that robustly over the past 6 weeks or so. But this was sort of a new angle, the objection saying that she was being targeted because of race or gender. And I wonder, that's an interesting point as well, that you used to head up the EEOC. Do you think that these claims, you know, to sort of go to the race place or go to the gender place, undermine her, Susan Rice, undermine her? I mean, you know, do we have to have women and women of color be able to go out there and take their licks, you know, on the substance or not, you know, just based on the substance of what they say?
As I understood it, this was a very hurried press conference. It was Friday. People were getting ready to go home, so they got together. Who cared, I suppose, about it most? I can tell you without fear of contradiction that I think at least most Democrats, and I believe some Republicans in the House, would say that there are two investigations going on. Perhaps we ought to treat this matter the way Democrats treated 9/11. We didn't say, Mr. President and your intelligence advisors, how come you didn't see the worst attack in American history? What we said was, we want an investigation. If you will recall, the Bush administration resisted a investigation until they finally had to do it. That, it seems to me, is where the issue should be, and there are real issues here.
Yeah.
Where was the security? Why was the ambassador allowed to go to an outpost that was completely undefended? Even now, we have nobody has been taken into custody that we know of.
Yeah.
And yet, there are members of the Senate trying to destroy the career of a brilliant career public servant who was the youngest assistant secretary in the history of the United States, Rhodes Scholar, and I hope they get it too.
Ma'am, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Of course.
All the best to you. Joining me now is Kirsten Power. She's a Fox News contributor and Daily Beast columnist. Kirsten, isn't that interesting that Eleanor Holmes Norton, who started that press conference but then had to leave, says the folks who followed her and tried to make this about race and gender, she says, mm-mm.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I really appreciate what she said, and I think there are a lot of Democrats who agree with what she's saying. The things that you were playing in that press conference, and there were many more comments, were very, very disturbing. And what they should have been saying is what Eleanor Holmes Norton is saying, which is, look, this is a very accomplished woman. She's a Rhodes Scholar. She went to Stanford. She had very important positions even in the Clinton administration. To go to the idea that she can't handle being criticized or that she's being attacked because she's black or because she's a woman, it's insulting to her, actually, and it's insulting to all women, I think.
Do you think there's too much of a rush to do that, to chalk criticism up to one's gender and or race, and does that then sort of lead to a perpetuation of a stereotype as women or African Americans as too weak to defend themselves, or
Totally.
in this special category where there's sort of eggshell people?
Well, yeah, I think it's this interesting paternalism that you see often on the left, where they claim they're standing up for women, or they claim they're standing up for black people, or whomever they think they're defending, when they're actually infantilizing them, and making it out that they can't handle the basic things that happen to many people in politics. Look at John Bolton. Even the criticisms that are made against Ambassador Rice, that maybe she doesn't have the right temperament for the job. Well, do you remember what happened to John Bolton? It was the same exact accusation.
Right.
And the thing is, so the question is, does she have the right temperament or not? That's a fair question. I don't think that that should be out of bounds. I'm not saying, certainly, Megan, I will call people out when I think there are very genderized attacks, where I think people choose to attack women based on being a woman. But when you're being criticized, I don't even like calling it attacked, because you're not being attacked. When you're being criticized or held accountable the exact same way men are held accountable, that's great. And you have to wonder,
you do have to wonder whether Susan Rice, as you point out, Stanford, Rhodes Scholar, I mean, she used to come on our show all the time when Barack Obama was running for office the first time.
Sure.
And she's very fiery in her personality, very capable of defending herself. Whether she was sitting behind closed doors cringing as she heard others injecting the issue of her gender and race into this discussion.
I would love to know that. And I think even with what the president did, a lot of people have said, oh, he was just standing up for one of his people. Look, the first part of his defense was perfectly appropriate. It's even okay for him to get a little riled up if somebody he thinks is being attacked unfairly and say, look, this is an accomplished woman, and go through all the reasons that she deserves to be Secretary of State if he decides to nominate her. He took it a step too far and moved into this paternalistic way that, I'm sorry, he would never speak about a man that way, ever. Eric Holder has taken so much more fire than Ambassador Rice ever has. And I cannot imagine the president saying, come after me, don't go after him. He's just an easy target. And so I think that, if I was Susan Rice, I would find this extremely offensive.
Wouldn't it be fascinating if she would come on and talk about it? The
yes,
odds are
come
not
on,
good.
Ambassador.
The odds are not good. All right, Kirsten, always great to get your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.